Hi, and welcome to Rice and Spice. My name is Darren, and I am your host. I'm joined today with Levi, and we are going to be talking about Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Hope you enjoy. All right, Levi. All right. So, tell me, how have you just been? How have you been overall? What have you been up to for the last week or so?
No, I've been good. I went home for Christmas break, exchanged gifts with my family. Then I went over to my girlfriend's and then gave her some gifts, bought her a Switch and Breath of the Wild. She was super doped.
That's a good game. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Excellent. And then, I just hung out with them, came back, and just thrown myself back into personal projects and work. How about yourself?
Did you? I've been good. I've been doing a lot of cooking with my family, so
Right
that's
on,
been
man.
that's been my kind of holiday. Did you buy the game with the intention of playing it yourself? Like, did you buy it for her, but really it was for you? You know what I mean?
Okay, so I should get out of the way. Legend of Zelda is my favorite thing ever.
Uh-huh.
With that being said, though, I did buy the Switch and the game specifically for her because I have a bunch of games here that I already have to play, and I think she never really played one before, but she knows how much I love it. So I want her to experience it. I'm like, let's just buy her the newest one. Everyone says it's like the best one. So I just gave that to her, and I watched her play it a bit. I knew a little bit about it, and it is quite breathtaking. It is a beautiful game. It's really fun, and she's having the time of her life. So much to the point where it's almost an unhealthy addiction. But as long as she's enjoying the game, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, and I think, if you're going to be addicted to something, it's better to be Zelda than other things. You don't want her getting
Yeah.
addicted to like speed.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's definite tiers. It's like healthy tier, like Zelda exercise, and then right beneath that's like crack cocaine, bath salts, and I guess everything else.
Steroids. Don't forget steroids.
Steroids, another
PEDs.
classic one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, let's go ahead and just move into Star Wars then, since that's kind of been the point of our
I hope none of that
conversations.
gets cut. I hope none of it gets cut.
Watch it. It's just gonna be, hi, we're talking about Star Wars.
I hope that's not the case.
All right.
Uh,
So, let's talk about Last Jedi because I think we've talked a lot about Rise of Skywalker. So I think it makes sense to go backwards now, talking about
yeah.
Last Jedi, and maybe we can even talk a little bit about Force Awakens too, if it kind of blends in a bit. It's not really that
Yeah.
strict.
And I'm sure a little bit of Rise of Skywalker will peep in, like how it kind of translates into that, or how it didn't, rather, depending on how the discussion goes. But let's just kind of go for it. This totally non-controversial talk about a non-controversial movie.
Yeah. So Star Wars Last Jedi. Let's just kind of rewind the tape, if you will. Like, let's just go back to 2017 when this movie came out, right? So try to think back. What happened in 2017, right? What was the world like? I think it was pretty different.
I don't know, man. It feels pretty much the same as it relates to Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Everyone's yelling at each other. Star Wars was the greatest thing in the world, and it was the most ruined and awful thing in the world, all at the same time. And then after this movie came out, it was still the same.
Yeah.
So I really feel like that's where it's at. And the state of the internet, very much in the same position. The Me Too movement was getting pretty big. I remember that. I remember a lot of people were going to jail, getting accused, not accused. Way too much accusation towards some people and not others. That was a big thing. I feel like that was a landmark in history.
And then also Salt Bay.
Yeah.
Salt Bay
So,
was big in 2017.
the Me Too movement, the sexual assault of many women and also many men in the workplace in Hollywood, and then
Yeah.
and Salt Bay.
Yeah. That was a big meme in 2017.
I'm just saying the cultural relevance. It's not. It's close. I'll just say it. I guess it's close.
Yes,
Um,
yes. And then I think also SpongeBob memes were becoming a thing in
Oh
2017.
yeah, there was like that one where he's like hunched over in that like
The chicken
chick
SpongeBob.
yeah, the chicken
Yeah.
position you won't always have a calculator in your pocket, said sixth grade teachers to all their students, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah,
We're getting real specific. We're getting real specific
yeah.
here.
And then like the font, you have like lots of random capitalizations in the middle of the words, so it looks all funky, right? Yeah. That's
That was
that's
def- that was
2017.
That's 2017, and of course, all of that immediately affected Star Wars. Just to kind of bring it back a little bit.
So I think
So, yeah.
yeah, I think one more thing that I want to think about in 2017 is just like there was a lot of controversy relating to Trump. I mean, there still is, of course, right? But I think that was kind of when the investigation was very, like the investigation into his dealings with Ukraine or Russia and all that. I think that was when it was kind of going at full force. And so people were most tuned in at that point. I think as the years went on, they got a little bit burnt out by the Trump coverage. But I think at this point, it was when it was at its highest, at its peak. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. And I actually think to actually tie this into like the discussion, I think memes aside, well, actually no, memes included. I think we lived in a time where there was so much political turmoil. We were looking for that escapism, that magicalness. Yeah, sure, magicalness. That was Star Wars.
I think you can
And
just say
just
magic.
magicalness. I'm gonna stick to my
Have you have
guns.
you ever seen Hunt for the Wilder People? Do you know what I'm talking about? Hunt for
I
the
know what you're
Wilder
talking
People.
about. I've never seen it, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. I was you just had a moment that is just like in the movie. It's the same thing.
Well, now I
So
gotta watch it. I've always wanted
yeah,
to watch it. Now I
it's a
have
great
to.
movie. You should watch it.
I will. I'll put it on my
Majestical,
list.
majestical. That's the word. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, anyways, we lived in a time where people were looking for the magicalness that was Star Wars, and to kind of escape like this, just like it seemed like this baseball bat that was being over everyone's head of just like politics in your face 24/7. Trump this, Trump that, left this, right this, and they stepped into this movie, and it was so different from what was traditional Star Wars for a lot of people that I think that's a reason a lot of people left very unhappy. It wasn't as bright or as fun as cheery. It dealt with a lot of like middle ground issues like potential gray Jedi, like who gives a shit about the light side or the dark side? There is just the Force. In war, both sides are being fed by the same people about war profiteering. And then I think that turned a lot of people off. And I think that is a direct correlation with the state of the way the world was, like when the movie was being made. I don't know. That's just kind of my general thoughts on like why the movie might have came out the way it did. But what do you kind of think?
I think that during this time period, a lot of films were like as you mentioned also the Me Too movement, right? I think a lot of films were starting to try to focus more on kind of social justice issues, right? I think the idea of having female characters that weren't just tropes, right? That weren't just stereotypical like damsels in distress. I think Rey kind of started that a little bit, just how she's kind of the main Jedi character. But then also with Rose, I think they tried to take it another step forward, right? Where they were saying this is a character that is completely your every woman, right? She has no real skills that are valuable as a as a hero.
She's just absolutely worthless, like every other human being is.
I'm not saying it like that, but she's just not your stereotypical. She has no skills that you would say, "Hey, you're a hero. Why don't you fight off the bad guys?" Right? She doesn't have any of those skills. What she has instead is she has like that sense of justice, right? That
Yeah,
sense of
very starry eyed. She hero worships. She's very much about man, I want to be part of something bigger because she herself is not like a Jedi, a Force user, a soldier really at that point. She's just kind of like a mechanic.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think Rose's induction into Star Wars, I think, was in response to a lot of the social context of the Me Too movement. And then I think a lot of the messages that Rose was trying to propagate in the film were related a lot to kind of the idea of there is no good side or bad side, right? Things are a bit more ambiguous. And I think that has a lot to do with kind of the elections, the US elections at least, where people were really spitting at each other, right? One side was saying you're evil, the other side saying you're ignorant, right? This and that, right? And I think um, Rose's message in the film about how, well, I guess not Rose's message, but more of the the traitor, not traitor, the hacker, DJ,
Yeah.
Benicio del Toro, right? His message was more about the ambiguity of life, right? The ambiguity of war, the ambiguity of profits, right? All of that. So I think that's why it's kind of important to think about the time that this movie came out, right? 2017, because I think the time of it actually impacted a lot of what the script was about. And yeah, I think that's how I see it. I think that's kind of lost in a lot of the discussion of Star Wars, to kind of not just see Star Wars as its own thing, but look at it from a larger picture of how does this fit in within the cultural context of America and then maybe of the world, right? So that's kind of the angle I'm looking at.
No, I think you definitely onto something there. I would say that's absolutely true, and not just to agree with you, but like looking at it that way, I think that's very true. And I think you were onto something with Rose as well, because I think Rose, her role in all this is very much like the point of view of the everyday average person. Like, yes, she's a woman, and that's a great step for women to have like a strong character, someone who's relatable. But she's definitely a character I think that anyone can latch onto. I love Rose. I loved Rose. I thought she definitely got shafted in the movie that came after this. But her part in this movie, I think, was also to show that the average person who's caught up in these huge conflicts, can easily get swept up in the bitterness and the anger, or the seduction of one side or the other, to kind of feed into like the hate and anger of both sides that are trying to conquer each other and just kind of screaming and shouting. But her message, whether you agreed with it or whether you liked it or not, the way it was delivered in the movie, her message is one of love. We win this by not by like attacking or being angry at those we hate, but cherishing and sharing and like believing and fighting for those that they love and all that. And I think that was actually a very powerful message. Maybe not execute always the best in the movie, but definitely I think that is a huge thing that she brings to the table when it comes to the messaging of this movie, and how it kind of counteracts a little bit of what DJ does, who's just about, life sucks, everyone's playing against each other, they're always screaming at each other, so just try to survive and get by. And Rose is like, no, take a stamp, remember it's about love. That's just kind of where I kind of view everything.
Yeah, I agree. I think another thing is that Rose is not like your stereotypical, like even a lot of female characters in movies, they're usually like the blonde babe that has like the G cup, you know what I mean?
they're just like 70 pounds a piece scraping against the ground.
She weighs 110 pounds and her breasts are 80% of those. That was a little insensitive, but
it's a little much, but that's kind of true. Even a woman who was like a main character in a movie, like an action star, like I think like Pamela Anderson in what was it, Barbed Wire? That's an old reference. Just, but seriously, like there were like female action stars when they came in, or female stars in general. Like typically, it was just someone who's just the stereotype hot babe. Typically well endowed in her chest, and is blonde and just kind of kicks ass, but is more there to just kind of service the male characters. Rose, beautiful woman in her own right, but very much someone who looks like someone you would see walking down the street. Someone who's like a good-hearted person looking to do good for a just cause. She has real emotions, real feelings. She falls in love. She hero worships, all this stuff. So just someone I thought was a very excellent creation on Rian Johnson's part, and very well portrayed by. I'm blanking on her name right now. Mae Marie Tran, was that her name?
Last name was Tran. I don't know if it was Mary Marie. I can look it up real quickly.
Yeah, look it up. I feel bad because I really did like her performance. Overall, I loved her performance, and I liked that character a lot.
Kelly Marie. Kelly Marie.
Kelly Marie. Man, now I'm just a terrible person.
Yeah.
Not you for making the boob joke, but me for forgetting her name.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm better. That's why I'm going to heaven if there is a heaven.
We're not doing this again. Not on air, Darren. Another time. We're here to talk about the Force. Things that are 100% true.
Yes.
The Force.
Of course. Yeah. So I agree, right? I think the fact that the casting of Rose, the fact that she is not your stereotypical action adventure heroine, right? I think that's a big part of it. And I think it kind of goes into what a lot of the other themes of Rian Johnson's movie are revolving around, right? Which is, I guess if we have to sum up this movie, right, in terms of the themes, what are the themes of this film, right? What are the things that this film is trying to tell us?
I think one theme that was started but fleshed out, I think, very well in this movie, one that was kind of continuing from the Force Awakens, was this idea of choosing your identity. You know, you are who you choose to be. You're not defined by a past, whether you have one or not, and you're not defined by what people might think you do, what they might think you do in the future, but more just like who you choose to associate yourself with, and how you choose to view yourself and put yourself out there in the world. And then another big one, obviously, was when I said earlier about Rose, about, like love prevails, which is very big coming from a human character, not a sort of superpowered character like Rey. Because when you have all the power in the world, it's easy to say, yeah, believe in love, faith, truth, and justice and all that. But when you're like a person with normal ability and you have to scrounge, to get your rewards, to fight for what's right, that's big coming from a character like that. And then the one last one is just, it just escaped me. It'll come to me. Just like you go for a second. It'll come to me. I just had it.
Sure, no problem. Okay, I think a big thing about. So I think you touched on a lot of the things that I thought about, right? Which was choosing your own path, right? Kind of, you're not determined. Your fate is not determined by destiny, in a sense. And there are some times where I feel like that theme is well reinforced, and there are other times where I feel like that scene is not very well reinforced. But I think another theme is kind of like learning to let go of preconceptions, right? Beliefs that you thought were true, or that you just beliefs, right? Beliefs that you have. Learning to let go of those things, and learning to be okay with the state of the way things are now. I think that's best represented by the scene with Luke and Yoda, when Yoda blows up the Jedi books with lightning.
Don't ruin it. You're on a roll. Keep going.
And just thinking about the scene, like if I'm saying this scene out loud, it just sounds so stupid. The Force Ghost of Yoda uses lightning that he draws with the Force to blow up a building that had a bunch of books in it that Luke was trying to save. So I guess just to go with the scene a little bit more, Luke is trying to burn the books, right? This is right after Rey leaves, I'm pretty sure. Let me try to remember. Rey tries to leave, I do believe, because she wants to save Ben Solo or something like that, right? Ben Solo and Rey have this moment, right? And then Rey confronts Luke for a bit. Luke tells Rey his dark secret. I kind of tried to kill Kylo, but not really, but kinda. And then Rey leaves. And then I think that, yeah, that's when Luke goes and he wants to burn the books, and he has like the torch and he's ready to do it, and then he stops and he's like looking all contemplative, and he's wondering like, should I do this, should I not? And then Yoda shows up and he's like, boom, bitch, blow up the Jedi library. And I remember Yoda said something like Luke was like, no, we have to save the books, and Yoda was like, oh, read them much you have, or something like that. And he's like,
He's like, well, well, and then there was like page turners. They were not.
page turners, they were not.
That was good. That was a good Yoda impression.
I like Yoda.
But actually, going on with that, I think it's a brilliant moment in the story, because I think all of that, because I think people can easily get sucked into one side or the other of that message. Where like, I think there's a good mixture of things where like there is, because this is also as prevalent, and I think this is what I was going for. Either like there's the line, I think it's kind of like forget the past, kill it if you have to, or let go of the past, kill it if you have to, which I think also comes into the moment you just said, because I think this movie, to Rian Johnson's credit, is never trying to fully tell you this is what you need to believe in or this is what you need to do. It's more of a movie of things can look a variety of different ways, and you as a person have to assess that and make your own decisions. And that, I think the moment you talked about is very much kind of the best of both worlds of that, where it's kind of like you need to learn to let go of parts of the past that are irrelevant and or like you don't need to worry about so much, and just focus on, search your soul and kind of focus on these core things that you really want to take and that'll like make you the person you're looking to be. And I think it's very much shown in that, where like they burn those books because a lot of those teachings, that's not what really matters. What matters is more like the pure messages of the Jedi Council that you don't necessarily need text for, and like the ways of the Force that you kind of more feel and express, rather than, oh, I can do this with the Force because it says it in chapter 32 of Jedi Handbook number 5.
Article 17.
Article 17-3.
Yeah. Final Order, Executive 66, stuff like that.
With a side of sausage. Out cart.
No, but I think... Hold on.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, the point is, not to undercut the moment, but the point is like, yeah, it's like this movie challenges you a lot in terms of your beliefs, like what you, not just what you believe to be a Star Wars movie, which it obviously does, but what it means to believe in the Force, to believe what's right and what's wrong, and what's important in this world. Mm-hmm. And I don't just mean the Star Wars world, but actually you can take this lesson out and apply it to our real world, which I think is pretty awesome. So I think that's a great one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that kind of goes back to the aspects of the time that this film was released, right? All of the media that was swirling around about fake news, about Russian hacking, right? About Trump tweeting all this information and all of this, right? I think if we look at it from a more meta perspective or from a higher level perspective, I think Luke really in this film kind of represents the typical Star Wars fan, right? I know, like for myself, I really wanted Luke to be like this powerful Jedi Master in the film. And I wanted him to just kick butt, right? Like, that's what I wanted when I first went in to watch The Last Jedi. Because that's what I was kind of hoping for in Force Awakens, right? I was hoping for this moment where I was like, wow, Jedi are still as cool as we remember, right? Just like in Empire Strikes Back or in, any of the other films. But then Luke really isn't the way that we expect him to be. He's all mopey about the past. He's like fixated on the past, right? And he's fixated on the way that things should be, right? He wants things to be a certain way. And because they're not a certain way, he's given up and he's decided to exile himself, right? And I think that kind of reflects a lot of like the typical Star Wars fan, right? Star Wars fans sometimes can feel like if things are not the way they used to be, if they don't have that same nostalgia feeling, then it's not worth it, and I'm not gonna deal with it. I'm just gonna, exile it. I'm gonna put it out of my mind. And so I think that was a lot of the reason why the prequel trilogy did so poorly initially, right? I think Phantom Menace had a pretty poor. I mean, it was still historic in its own way, but I think that the audience reaction for Phantom Menace was pretty negative, and in the same way that I think Last Jedi was pretty negative. And so there's this idea that we want to have things the same way all the time. We have like these nostalgia glasses or these rose tinted glasses, right? But Yoda in the film kind of blows it all up. And I think it's interesting that Yoda does this because Yoda is kind of like the classic Jedi character in a sense, right? He's
Yeah,
like the,
he's like the arbiter of everything cute, good, and also wise all at the same time.
yeah. And I remember the scene where we first find out that Yoda is Yoda, right? Because when we first meet Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, we don't even know. We just think he's this weird green thing
Little frog guy.
on Dagobah, right? Yeah, he has a lot of similarities with Kermit.
He does.
But that's why they're both so endearing, I guess. Jim Henson did a good job there. But anyway, yeah, I think it's interesting that Yoda is the one that decides to blow it all up because I think that if Luke had blown it all up, that just would have been a strike against Luke. I think a lot of fans would have been very negative about that. It would have been like, man, Luke really is just going against all the things that we liked about him. He used to be such a badass. He used to be so cool, and now he's burning books, right? So I think Yoda really saved Luke in that sense from a lot of negative reaction, and I think made a turn where that scene could have been very negative, but it turned into a big positive for the film. Yeah, that's my thought.
No, I really like that. And just to add on to it a bit, one thing I really liked about Luke is that, because obviously you said like a bunch of fans were really upset that Luke was not the character that they remembered, nor was he the character they wanted him to be. And there was many things like that when I watched this movie, because I saw it twice in the theaters. And the first time I watched it, I enjoyed the movie, but I was like, I had to think about it. I was like, I had to pause and I really think about everything. And went back and saw it again. And yes, there were just like the way Luke was, and I just saw many things in this movie that I didn't necessarily want, and there was other things that I did want that I didn't get. But what this movie gave me, including the character of Luke Skywalker, it gave me things I didn't know I needed, which I think is the mark of a great movie. Because Luke, I think does represent any normal human being. He's still a human person, because I'm not the same person that I was when I was 13 years old, or when I was 18, or when I was 21, or even when I'm going to be 29 here in a few days. And it's like, I'm not even the same person I was last year. And I think it showed a great evolution of someone who came so far in his development, but got so swept up in his own sort of mythic tale. And then his reality came crashing down, and then he questioned himself, like, was I doing the correct thing? And then all this, and it was like a loss of faith for a bit, which is very common among many people of many different faiths. And then he met someone else. He met this young girl who kind of reminded him, hey, there's still stuff to believe in. And then Yoda kind of brought that home to him, like, yeah, there's still good stuff. You made some mistakes. You made some bad judgment calls, but, you're still Luke Skywalker. You can still choose to be the Luke Skywalker that everyone kind of believes you are, in a way, and he did. He chose to do that. He chose to be a hero, and he didn't do it exactly the way everyone wanted him to, which is fine. He did it in a very cool way, though, and he's still the mythic hero while still being a human being at the same time. Which I think is a fantastic, beautiful mark of cinema in these movies. That whole sequence, which we'll get to a bit later, of him facing down Kylo Ren. So I think, overall, I loved Luke's character, especially the 3 different times they show him getting ready to kill Kylo Ren, and it's different from each interpretation. But the last one is somewhere in the middle, which very much harkens to the big message in the movie that it's never clear and cut and dry, It's open for interpretation a little bit.
I think, one thing that I will say, or that I do want to tag on to what you said, is I don't think necessarily that Luke chose to be the hero. I think Luke chose to do what he always wanted to do in the first place, right? And it just so happens that that was a heroic thing to do, right? But I think that the path that he decided to take, which was to confront to confront Kylo Ren, right, to confront Ben Solo, I think that was not necessarily because he wanted to be a hero and help the Order, not the First Order, I'm sorry, the Resistance, right? I don't think he did that because he really wanted to help. Of course, he helped them. It's not like he doesn't want to help them. But what I'm saying is, I think the first and foremost, what he wanted to do was he wanted to redeem himself, right? And he did it in only the way that he could. And I think that's what's important, is that he tried to do something that only he could do, right? And for that, he is remembered in a better light than just as I don't know. Where am I going with this?
No, no, I really think you, if I may, I think you have it right on. To add a little bit more into both of our thoughts, when I say he chose to be the hero, he chose to be the hero. He chose to be the hero this saga needs, not the one we wanted. Because he chooses a path of nonviolence. And that even harkens back to the original movies. When he walks up and he says, like, to Yoda, he's looking for a great warrior. He's always trying to be like this great warrior, because that's his perception of what a Jedi Knight is. What I think is cool about this movie is, in this one, he's not being a great warrior, but he's being what a Jedi Knight is supposed to be at its core. This person of peace, this person who can tap into the Force, and who can put fires out with just his words and with the power of the Force behind him. And he does that expertly in a very cool fashion, projecting himself across the way, talking to Kylo Ren, spreading hope throughout the galaxy, and kind of starting to rally people to believe in that, like, yes, there's still hope on the horizon. And I think that's very much what Luke's character is supposed to be there. Yeah. So we did not get him swinging a lightsaber and cutting down Kylo Ren, or him getting stabbed in the chest in heroic death, which really I think I would have been upset by that, because I don't want to see Luke get cut in half, but he got to do something really cool, and then profess a very beautiful message without actually saying it too much. And then he got to fade away, staring up at the binary sunset. It's beautiful. It really is.
I gotta say though, they really do milk the binary sunset thing in the sequel trilogy. It happens a lot.
Yeah, they really milk those two suns for all they're worth.
Those two suns have never had as much screen time as in the sequel trilogy, man. This is just, I know it's a great scene in the original, in The New Hope, but it doesn't show up ever again for a long time, until I think, does it show up in Return of the Jedi? I'm trying to remember, and I don't see it in my head.
Maybe the score does, but the actual imagery of it does not. I don't think it returns again until the Last Jedi, I believe. But once it hits there, I mean, it shows up again in The Rise of Skywalker, and, because they want you to remember, like, oh, Luke, remember the beginning of Star Wars. But to their credit, that is a very powerful thing, that score, that moment, the two suns staring off into the distance, thinking of wonder and hope and adventure, and what lies next. And I think that's very prevalent in all those. Even in Luke's death, when he stares back, to me, it kind of feels like he's remembering his whole life right up until that point when he just calmly passes away. I'm done. This is the end of my journey. I've done everything I need to do. And then he just fades away. He ascends and just goes into the Force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they probably have a binary sunset in Phantom Menace somewhere, just because they're on Tatooine again, right? So probably there's a binary sunset in there somewhere. But anyway, I agree. I think the way that Luke dies is interesting. We can kind of start to talk a bit about the different kinds of deaths that happen in the movie, right? So there's two deaths, right? Luke, and then there's Snoke. And then
Should have been 3.
there was one more potential death that was Finn, right? So let's just quickly talk about.
There was 4. Captain Phasma also died.
Okay, yeah. Well, don't forget about Stormtrooper 74. I'm sorry.
Captain Phasma was important. Not as important as other people, but she was important.
She was not important. What did she do? She didn't do anything.
Okay, we'll just jump into it. Captain Phasma.
Yeah.
Captain Phasma was the representation of Finn's entire arc. She was he was the stormtrooper who was uncomfortable with killing, was being forced to do it, and he's trying to escape that life. He's trying to break away from it. But I think one of the final pieces to the puzzle was he didn't really fully overcome her. He didn't fully overcome that sort of full enslavement. He wasn't fully dedicated to the resistance. He was still kind of scared of the resistance. And then at the end of the movie, he confronts the very person, his former leader, and he just bashes her face, breaks her helmet, and casts her into a fiery abyss. So her death means nothing for her, but it means everything for Finn. And that's the only reason it means anything. Otherwise, she's kind of a wasted character.
Sure.
Doesn't sound like you buy it. Doesn't sound like you buy it. I'm not saying it might be delivered the best, but I'm saying that is important for Finn's character. The character of Captain Phasma is only relevant in that regard.
So I agree that all of your assumptions or all of your kind of all of your prerequisites line up, and they do kind of lead to this conclusion, right? The argument itself is sound or valid, right? But
waiting for the hammer to drop.
But it's just not convincing whatsoever. It's true, right? Phasma does represent the authoritarianism of the First Order and their control over the stormtroopers, because she is the leader of the stormtroopers, right? It is very true. And you're right in that Finn was very much hesitant about joining the resistance, because the very first thing we see is him trying to run away, right?
All right, you're going to disagree with me. It doesn't matter. You have to go back for my point.
Well, I'm just saying, all of your arguments are true, but that does not necessarily make the argument in and of itself a convincing argument, all right?
No, that's just something. When I look at it, that's what I see. That doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but that's to me the only relevance that Captain Phasma holds. It's kind of I guess if you want to sum it up into a brief sense, she's the embodiment of his total fear, his big obstacle that he has to overcome to fully realize himself, and then he does it. And people might say, that's a bunch of hogwash, or I don't really care. That's fine. It's okay. Just for me, that's what Finn. That's Finn's big moment for him, because his other big moment was stolen. It was ripped away from him by Rose. Well, probably more by Rian Johnson, but
see, I disagree. I disagree in that sense. I don't think that. Well, okay, let's just talk about it right now then, since we're already here, right? So Let's go over the scene. Let's kind of set it up. So we have the First Order and their entire, I don't know if it's their entire fleet, but it's a lot of First Order machines and warships and all that. They're all camped out in front of this little fort with this big wall. And this is the last stand of the resistance, right? They're down to maybe, it seems 20 something people, something like that. It feels like a handful of people. Just a handful of people are left. They have to use these old broken down speeders or something that can't even fly. They have to drag across the sand, and the sand is turning red. I thought that was actually very visually that was a very cool scene, right? I thought that was cool. But
it was salt, not sand.
Okay, salt. All right, that's fair. It's been a while. So, but then why does it turn red? But anyway, it's oxidizing.
Red salt. It's beautiful.
And so, so what happened? Okay, there's a laser beam, this big laser beam that the First Order brings out, because apparently they can't break through the wall.
Yeah, the barrier.
Or something, right? The wall.
It's kind of like their, what is it, the like that thing they use in the Lord of the Rings, that huge battering ram. This is the same thing, except it's a laser cannon.
It's a laser battering ram.
Yes.
Now, I think I recently rewatched the film, and I remember I remember Poe saying that it doesn't matter if they blow up the battering ram because they have more battering rams or something. There was something that he said. I don't have the script in front of me or anything, but I think he said something to that effect. But anyway, what's happening is the battering ram is about to shoot its laser beam through the wall, and what we have Finn, and Finn is making a nosedive straight towards that battering ram, and he's sitting in his cockpit, his little rickety cockpit, as it starts to shake more and more, and the cockpit all around him is starting to glow bright orange because of the heat and the energy of the battering ram as it gets closer and closer. And just as he's about to make contact, Rose comes out of the screen right. Enter screen right. Rose. She comes in with her own speeder and knocks Finn out of the way. They both crash off to the side, and they're both unharmed. I guess they're a little banged up, but they're basically fine, right? Nothing that a few band-aids can't fix. And the battering ram shoots the laser beam and blows up the thing. And then Finn goes over to her, and he's like, "Why did you save me? What you doing, crazy lady?
What you doing?
What you doing?" And Rose says something along the lines of, "Do you remember the words? Do you remember what exactly she says?" I'll pull it up.
I'm going to take a stab at it as you pull it up. I believe it's those, we don't win wars by fighting against those we hate, but by believing in those we love, or saving those we love.
I saved you, dummy. I saved you, dummy. That's how we're going to win. Not fighting what we hate. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love. That's what she says.
Okay.
And then,
I got close.
Boom,
yeah.
Explosion in the background, and
big kiss.
Yeah, and then she leans in for the kiss, and I'm looking at the scene right now, and John Boyega, Finn, looks so confused. He looks so confused. Good acting by Finn, really does.
No, it really is.
He really does look confused.
And just not to break away from our conversation too much, but just to focus on that kiss specifically, I thought, even though the kiss feels, obviously everyone says kiss is so forced, and that's true, and I think it's supposed to be like that. She is someone who is very starstruck, who says "Oh, you're Finn," and loves his whole mythos about him, the stormtrooper that broke away. So he's like a resistance hero in her eyes. And she saves him, and then just in a moment of passion, she kisses him. And he's just like, what, huh? And he just, and his eyes say it all, what is going on? And that's exactly, I think it's perfect. I think it did exactly what it was supposed to do. And admittedly, as far as the saving of Finn goes, I don't think it was developed enough in the next movie, but I think I've learned to live with it better now. But at the time when it happened, I was so ready to watch him die. Not because I hated Finn, but because I thought that would have really completed his arc. The person who was, just kind of scared, wasn't into the resistance at all. And then he's just always constantly trying to run away or cower away. And then he makes the big sacrifice play. And then they would have killed off a major Star Wars character, which would have been a huge, huge different thing that's never been done before, midway through the movie, legitimately gone. And they took it away from him. Nowadays, I'm better about it, but at the time, I remember I was like, oh, he should have been vaporized. But that's just kind of how I look at the whole moment.
Okay. I think, so two things I want to talk about there then. The first is the kiss itself, in terms of, well, I guess three things, but the first two things kind of are tied together. So let's start from the very basic one, which is the kiss, right? I don't think the kiss is that forced because the whole movie, we see them together and we see how their relationship builds, right? We see it from start to finish in the sense that we understand that they start out in two very different places. One person is like 100% committed to the resistance, that's Rose, and one person is like 0% committed to the resistance, and that's Finn. Right?
Thank you for that distinction.
Yeah. We have our conflict. We have set the conflict between the characters, right?
And then you have DJ, who's also telling you it doesn't matter all at the same time.
Yeah.
Who's like the very middle ground guy.
I wouldn't even say he's middle ground. I would say he's like outside of the conflict entirely, and he's just like, why are you guys even fighting, right?
Fair point. Continue on.
So we have these two characters, and over the course of the film, we are seeing how one character brings the other to her side. We see how through their trip to the casino planet, Canto Bight, right? That Rose is able to convince Finn to help, not to help, but to see what are the atrocities of war outside of just the fighting, right? Not just in terms of like the bloodshed and the killing, but also in terms of the greed, in terms of the lack of respect for other human beings, right? And the lack of rights that people are afforded, right? Kind of like basically slavery and stuff like that. So yeah. I think this allows Finn to externalize his own issues, right? All of his issues initially were just internalized. I have to escape. I have to save myself. I have to find the girl that I love, right? And now I think through the course of this film, he's able to see things more from the perspective of how are other people. He's able to empathize, right? That's the best word. Empathize with other people. Empathize with their plight, especially through the course of the war, right? And all throughout this, I think it's pretty obvious that Rose likes Finn, right? Initially, it might not have been romantic, right? Initially, it was more just like, as you said, like star idolization, right? But I think over the course of it, it becomes more and more clear that they have a mutual understanding and they have a mutual friendship, and then that kind of evolves into, a bit of a romance, right? And I don't feel like it's forced. I feel like it's pretty, you could see it coming, right? It didn't feel like the same way that Rey kissed Ben. When Rey kissed Ben Solo in Force Awakens, that one felt a little fast. Because of course there were other things that were happening between the two that kind of hinted at that, I agree. But it didn't feel like those things were happening, I feel, in other movies, right? The relationship between Rey and Ben was happening not in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
It was happening in Last Jedi, right? Last Jedi is where they're having like a lot of real interaction, and they're actually like kind of talking and like getting heart to heart. In Rise of Skywalker, they're just kind of trying to kill each other, basically. And she basically does kill him, and then heals him, and then kills, like, and then he,
It's a different movie. It's a different video. Sorry. Yeah, it's just a different discussion.
But, so anyway, so that's the first thing. The forced kiss, right?
Yes.
I don't think it's forced. I think it has a very good arc. And I think this is, like, the true arc of Finn, right? There's kind of like two separate arcs going on with Finn. Two separate stories, I feel. The first story is fighting back against the resistance as an authoritarian figure, right? Which goes back more to like your Captain Phasma idea, right? Beating up Captain Phasma, breaking free from the chains that bind you, man, right? Like being a free individual, living out your own life and making your own decisions. Okay?
Yeah, America.
Resistance. Right? So that's Finn. And then there's also the Finn that is, I'm a selfish, egotistical asshole who only cares about the cute girl and my own ass. And now it's about, I'm someone who wants to help others. and I understand the problems of other people. And I think these are interlinked. These story arcs are interlinked, but I think they are also distinct from one another. So that's my first part. But I want to let you
Okay.
go now since I've been talking a lot.
No, it's all right. No, I think you really have something. I never gave that much thought. Like, I guess I never saw, like, because I just always saw it as Finn's arc, but it really is two separate arcs because like the fact that he is someone who's completely selfish and learning to not be and empathize and looking at other people's quarrels and seeing how other people view the war, because Rose is also a very much a character who is deeply affected by the war. She's not just like Finn, who his central problem is, I have to get away from the First Order, and I have to go save Rey because that's the girl of my dreams. Rose is like, I lost my sister right off the bat of the movie. She blew up. She died a horrible death, and she died a hero, and now I'm just a mechanic, and I still see like all the effects of the war, not just like my sister dying, but like the slavery, the animal cruelty, all that, and I have to perform well, and I have to do well, and I want to so bad. And she's looking at a person right across from her who she thinks is like the ultimate hero, but he's not. It's not until he meets her, interacts with her, that he makes that step. He he ascends into that sort of hero status, I would argue, until he meets her. So I think you're right on the money with that. I think like his arcs are very much met at the end of this second movie with all that. And as far as the kiss goes, like I said, it's not forced. To Finn, it's forced because he's completely oblivious, but it's not forced at all in terms of how it's built up to for Rose's part. And I think a big problem that I have with not so much the movie, but with like the general audience goer, is I think sometimes they'll look at a moment in a movie and they'll see just the moment. And then they'll latch on to their initial feelings about the moment, and then they just go with that, and then it's either the best thing or the worst thing ever. But people rarely just stop and think about, okay, why did this happen? And just like everything you said, I think completely justifies the moment. And it really works. I think it really works in the movie.
So let's talk about the actual death now, right? Or the lack of the death, right?
Yes.
So one thing that you said actually just now that actually kind of had a spark for me was when you talked about how Rose's sister died. And so when I think about that, it kind of actually makes another connection for me. So what happened was, in the beginning of the film, Rose's sister, I don't know her name. I can try and look it up, I guess, the character's name. But anyway, Rose's sister is the bomber. I guess she's like a pilot or something. But anyway, she's on the bomber ship, and basically the bomber ship blows itself up to blow up the battleship for the bad guys, right? So they sacrifice. She sacrifices herself to blow up a battleship, which in the end, which ties into Poe's story, right? Because Poe was the one who kind of pushed the team to fight, and it was kind of a hollow victory in a sense. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is important about that scene that ties into Rose is that Rose was incapable of saving her sister. I don't think there was anything that Rose could have done.
Oh my God.
To save her sister.
Everything you're about to say is just hitting me right now. Keep going.
But now think about when Finn is about to kill himself, to sacrifice himself in the same way that her sister sacrificed herself to save to do something, right? Whether it's heroic or not, regardless of whether or not it's heroic. Rose now has a choice where she didn't have a choice before. She can stand aside and let Finn die, and he could die a martyr, and he can become a martyr and probably a hero, but still a martyr, right? Or she can save the person she loves, right? And I think it's very clear that because she could not save her sister, she has to save Finn. So there is no longer a choice now. She has to do this. She has to save the man that she loves. And I think that's why she talks about at the end, like before she kisses him, she talks about like, we have to save the things we love and all that. Like at first I was thinking like, that's kind of a dumb thing to say, right? Like it doesn't seem very interesting. It seems kind of dumb. But now that, I've thought about it a bit more and kind of tying it back to the sister,
Dude,
I
I'm
think
not
it
gonna
makes a lot
lie,
more
dude.
sense.
You just like because I guess I said before I wanted Finn to die. Then I thought that would have completed his arc, but man, just thinking about that, it makes me love Rose's character more. Because it is a choice, and that's what makes movies great is when you have characters that are actively making choices, and not so much as like the scripts or the story is just steering them along. And I think that's beautiful. And I can't tell you how much I'm kicking myself in the nuts because I'm like, oh, Darren thought of something. I thought of this movie so much, and I was like, oh, Darren, that's so fucking good. From a writing standpoint, I'm like, oh, I'm geeking out so hard right now. Man, I love that. I
Yeah.
have nothing to add. I love that.
I think one thing that I would have changed though is in the direction of the film, that aspect of her choice is not focused on very much. I think it would have been better to have a short sequence of like showing Rose in the decision making. Because what happens is Rose comes out of nowhere and saves Finn, right? Like enters screen right, Rose,
Yeah.
boom, knocks him out of the path. I think what would have been better is like, but you see it from Rose's perspective instead. We were focused on Finn's perspective in the film, right? We're in the cockpit with Finn, and we're seeing him like closing his eyes and having his like Independence Day moment, like I'm back or whatever. Did you miss me or whatever, right? But then I think what should have happened was instead we see it from Rose's perspective, where we're in the cockpit with Rose, and we see her and we see her eyes following Finn and his little speeder as it goes across the salt, right? And then we have a picture of her calling back to her sister, and like a moment where she is like maybe standing in front of like a window where she can see her sister, right? Like going across space and then blowing up. And now we see Finn going across the salt. And then we see Rose
Man.
saving him. I think
See,
that would have done it a lot better.
here's the thing, like, because I like that. What you just described, I think, is a really cool sequence and scene. But I'm really torn because on one hand, I think that's a great moment. It does take away the believability that Finn will die, though, which I really like in that scene.
That's
Because
true.
when Rose is there, you see, like, in seeing the conflict, I think it's a great character moment for her. But I think by the slightest of hairs, as much as I like your version, I still like the way it pans out for two reasons. One, you get the suspense that Finn's going to die. And for any new person who's coming to this, I want them to have that moment because that's a really cool moment. And then I also like the subtext of everything you said before this because she does that, and like it goes back to what I said before, thinking about why characters make decisions or do things, because just us discussing that this is probably why she did that, and it's completely backed up by everything in the movie. That's really beautiful. It makes the movie so much richer, and you didn't even have to show it. It just happened, and you can look back on the behavior of the character and think like, oh, hell yeah, that makes sense why she would save Finn. Not just because she likes him, but because of her sister's death and all that shit you just said before. So, by the slightest of affairs, I think I would still keep the same, but I still think what you put forward was, I think it's still a good version. A different version, but a good version. I guess it just depends the kind of person you are.
Yeah, I think the only reason why I propose that is just because I feel like there's so much negativity about Rose's choice to save Finn and I think one of the reasons is because we don't see her real motivations, right? It's not thrown at you. It's more subtext. Her motivations for doing it, right? So I just wanted to kind of give her like more
No,
few yeah. Go
I
ahead.
suppose you could. Yeah, I can see that. I guess because like we think about this like in much more intense than the average person does. So like for me, like the way it is and reading the subtext that's there is perfect for me. But I guess for the common, more average moviegoer and people who think about this stuff, showing that I think would have I agree probably would have helped her character out, and then maybe she would have gotten a bigger part in the movie afterwards if that was the case.
Yeah, maybe she would have
Or
done something. in the next movie.
Or maybe it would just made it worse because they still would have shafted her in the next movie.
Yeah, maybe, right?
Maybe. No, but yeah, I love Rose. It's such a shame. Rose, dare I say it through this discussion, she might be one of my favorite characters in Star Wars.
Interesting. I wouldn't put her that high, but I do think she deserves more credit than she is awarded at this point. I hope
she's definitely risen the ranks. I'll give it more thought, but she's definitely risen the ranks through this discussion.
Yeah, I feel like she is a tier above Jar Jar. If that's what if this is how we're doing it.
and then a tier above her is obviously Captain Phasma.
Oh,
she's like Captain Phasma's like the S rank of like the Star Wars fandom.
Where's Boba? Where's Boba Fett?
Boba Fett, I guess he's like a B.
B. Oh wow, that makes sense. The alliteration, right? Okay.
Yeah.
B for Boba.
That's exactly why I did it. Just made sense.
Okay, and then last thing I want to talk about with regards to Finn's death. I've heard you mention many times about how you want Finn to die. Can you just kind of iterate more on that? Like, why is it that you wanted Finn to die?
From a character standpoint, I just thought that would have really completed his journey, like I've said before. Like, from the first movie, he starts out a coward, and then, he goes through this big transition, especially with Rose, learning to be the hero that people perceive him to be or people think he can be, And those messages kind of hit him through the whole thing. And then he hits a big roadblock when he meets CJ, who's kind of like, not intentionally, but like kind of showing him that it doesn't really matter. But then he makes the active choice that, you know what, it does matter. It does matter if I do these things. It does matter if I am this person. And he makes a choice to be that person and try to sacrifice himself. And then to kill himself off, to me, is the ultimate commitment. Like, if no one else believes that you're really this hero and you do something like that, then by that point you're definitely the hero. You've done the biggest possible thing you can do to prove that you're this hero that everyone thinks you should, or at least the hero that you want to be or perceived to be. But from the other side of it, man, that would have been something bold and something new that I had never seen a Star Wars movie before. Killing off a big main character like that in the second movie. Yes, I know they did it to Han Solo, sort of in Empire Strikes Back, but he was frozen in carbonite, so it was a little ambiguous. He could come back theoretically. You getting vaporized in a giant laser beam, you're gone. You were gone.
I don't know.
And don't you pull the Emperor into this bullshit. That's different. That's a different discussion. It's a different thing entirely.
Well, like,
it's a different
Darth
movie.
Maul got cut in half, and then
he was
fine.
vaporized. He wasn't vaporized.
Right, okay.
I can think of a bunch of people who've been cut in half and lived. Loveless from Wild Wild West. I'm just gonna stop the list there.
Yeah, it's a good list. Watch Mojo, top 10 characters who've been cut in half and then brought back.
Darth Maul, Loveless from Wild Wild West.
3 out of 10 pending.
Be back for our next video. We go to the other 8.
After this ad, don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay.
But that's how I feel about his death. I think it would have been such a cool, and because then you would have like really mourned the tragic loss of not just someone based upon nostalgia. Like Leia died, Han died, Luke died. All that's like it's heartbreaking. Because we love those characters. But Finn was someone new who we're starting to grow with, and all of a sudden he gets offed in the second movie. I thought that would have been really, really cool, and really cool to explore as you go forward. And then now you just have Poe and Rey. Okay, how do they have to deal with it? And how does Rose have to deal with that? Because clearly she loved him, and now she's lost her sister and this person she worshipped as a hero and kind of loved, romantically. So I thought that's where it was going to go, but it didn't. Mm-hmm. So at least by the end of The Last Jedi, that was like that was one of my two big like I don't want to say complaints. It was just like things I would have done differently, slight nitpicks maybe. But still, it was still good. It was still good, especially after this discussion. It's I'm cool with it now.
Uh, I think that's really, I think Rose just needs some media coaching because those lines just don't do it. Those lines are just not gonna get people on your side. She just needs some solid media coaching.
HR's gonna give her a call up.
Hey Rose, we went through your scripts. We recommended some changes, so they're all in red. So just read what we wrote instead. Okay? Sounds good. Thanks. Bye.
And then she grabs the script. She grabs the script. Fuck this shit. I got a line deliver. Finn, you dumb piece of shit.
We gotta save love. All right.
You gotta save love. Now get your head out of your ass. Get out of that ship. Let's go be fucking loving to people. Damn it.
You better love me right now. Love me hard and love me good, okay?
Right now.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I do think that what Rose said kind of ruined
We're just gonna brush past what just happened. we gotta keep rolling. You're right.
What just happened? I thought it was a normal conversation.
We just discussed what happened in the movie.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, that's Finn's death scene. I think that's it. That's what I wanted to talk about.
I guess just to wrap the whole thing up in a nice spicy burrito. Stay on brand a bit. I think the Last Jedi, as it progresses through time, will be seen in much better light. I think it's a great movie. I think it's a movie that challenges fans in so many different ways. It makes a few stumbles, like it sometimes it goes like maybe a hair too far with the misdirection. I think sometimes it goes a hair too far with some jokes, like Luke tossing the lightsaber over his shoulder. Not that him doing that is necessarily bad, but I think framing it comedically may have been a poor choice. Maybe keeping that more of a serious moment, I think, would have done better for the movie as a whole.
I think that set the tone for the film, though. I think that really did kind of put everyone's expectations. Like, it's just saying, like, yo, you think it's gonna go this way? It's not. All right, let's just get it over with.
No, I don't have a problem with the moment, just the way the moment's portrayed. Like, I think you could have still done that. Like, a simple one would have been like, because I think it undercuts the movie, the moment, the ending of the movie before it, where she holds the lightsaber out. He looks at it with like disbelief that she's there, and he's looking at his life in her hands, essentially. And then the next movie, he comically tosses over her shoulder. I think it would have been something much better if, like, maybe she holds out the lightsaber, he looks at it, it pans onto Rey's face, and you hear his metal hand grip it. And then you hear a thud, and Rey looks confused. The camera doesn't leave her face, and he just walks past her. And then, like, the next scene it cuts to is like it just cuts to her walking over and picking it up. And then you still get the same message: Luke threw it away, and you're confused why. And then that still sets the tone for the movie without it being just like a quick little sort of chuckle. Because I think the comedy there doesn't hold as the time goes on. And I think that still, sends a good message to the rest of the movie, and then it also still sets up Luke's arc. But that's just my opinion when I look at that. But all in all, I think the movie's fantastic. I do love it. I think this conversation about the movie also enriched and reinformed a lot of things, but also just made the movie even better for me. And I think it's also a shame that Disney, JJ, Kathleen Kennedy, whoever you want to place blame on or however it panned out, I think it's kind of a shame that they didn't take on the task of trying to really make something great based off a mixture of what they wanted to do and also what this movie was trying to accomplish.
So where does this movie fall compared to the other two in the trilogy for the sequels? Do you consider it the best of the three, the worst of the three? Where does it fall for you?
See, that's how I think I don't think it's of the three. I don't think it's at the bottom. I think that belongs to the Rise of Skywalker firmly for me. Not that it's a bad movie. Just to put that into context for anyone who's listening, I don't think it's a bad movie.
No one's
overall.
listening, Levi. Just to be
No
clear.
one. it's just us speaking into the empty abyss, the empty void.
No one's listening.
Anyways, but like the Rise of Skywalker is on the bottom. It's hard because like I love The Force Awakens so much. It hits. Yes, it's a lot of nostalgia, whatever, but it's different enough that the nostalgia doesn't bother me, and like there's so much I love about that movie. But I think by the slightest of hairs, I think I give it to The Force Awakens because like it plays on my nostalgia just enough and gives me enough new stuff that I think it's great. And it moves so well. It moves so well. It moves smoothly and quick, and it gets you to the moments without being too fast. I think and the lightsaber fights and the atmospheric battles are all pretty cool. I like it a lot. I think, and it may change with time, but I think just by a hair, The Last Jedi sits underneath it for being so bold, so different, so new, with so many great ideas. I think the problem is it also loses a little bit because by virtue of the next movie, this movie now falls down a bit more just because everything that's thrown away or everything they kind of like, they kind of take the piss out of The Last Jedi, The Rise of Skywalker does, and unfortunately that does affect this movie because it's a middle chapter.
Okay. I think for me, I try to compare the movies in the sense that I only compare them to themselves. And what I mean by that is I try to remember, how did I feel walking into the movie? How did I feel walking out of the movie? Right? And of course the movies are going to interlink with one another, right? It's a trilogy. They're going to interlink. But what were the emotions that were strong when I was watching it? And what were the thoughts that I had when I was watching it? What were the emotions that were really playing at me? And so for me, The Rise of Skywalker was the weakest of the three because during the film, I just felt like there were all these wasted opportunities and I couldn't bring myself to enjoy it as much just because of all of the things that I saw as flaws. And then the thing that I felt was the issue with Force Awakens is I just felt like I was rewatching New Hope, right? And that kept coming back to me. And I think that kept detracting from my enjoyment of it because it felt like it was trying to measure itself up to The Force Awakens. To New Hope more than it was trying to be its own thing, right? Kind of like when you're so obsessed about being a certain way that you kind of betray your own personality, right? And then, so based on that, like when I was watching The Last Jedi, I think that was the film that I actually kind of got swept up into it. And I was actually back in the moment and I was thinking like, whoa, this is new, this is interesting, this feels more like Star Wars, right? Like the scene where Luke projects himself into to face Kylo. That was a very Star Wars moment because it was like it's the Force. It's doing something exciting and interesting and something that doesn't feel like it's it feels like it's been thought out well, right? The whole point of the film, all of the plot sequences, they feel like they have a meaning and a purpose, right? And so that's why I really like The Last Jedi, and I would rank Last Jedi as one of the better Star Wars films. Might be like in my top 3.
I wouldn't fight you on that. I wouldn't fight you on that at all. And like I said, my judgment may change over time because the more I think about these movies individually and in tandem with each other and whatnot, my judgment always changes, throughout time, which is perfectly fine. Anyone can do that. But I have to say, that's fair. I think that's everything you said was completely fair. And I think, I think it's a good.
Okay, good is good. Good is good. So then I think we should wrap it up here. It's been a long time.
No, man,
talking.
we got to talk about Captain Phasma more, man. We got another 2 hours in this discussion to go.
Please don't make me talk about Captain Phasma for 2 hours. I don't want to do that.
You know what? You're right. 3 hours.
Oh, now I'm down. Let's go. Okay. First of all, did you know Phasma is actually a reference to another movie? Do you know what movie, Levi? Wow. Let's go ahead and research that. Yeah.
full disclosure, if Captain Phasma would have been cut in half, it would have just added to her elite status in the Star Wars universe.
I think,
but
at least number
I
2
think we're done.
on the Watch Mojo list.
At least number 2, right behind Loveless from Wild Wild West.
Exactly. All right. Well, anything else? Yeah, another Phasma trivia. It's the same. The actress is the same one who plays that Game of Thrones character. I forget her name. Brienne. Yeah, is that right? Brienne of Tarth. I'm really not a big Game of Thrones fan, so it's a little bit difficult for me to talk about that TV show and all of that. Anyway, I'm tired. It's been a long 2 hours of talking.
It was at least it was a good 2 hours of talking.
I suppose so. We'll see how it works out, right?
Yeah.
You're not the one who has to edit it, Levi. Just to be clear.
I was just about to say that. It's so good for me because I just got to stand here and just talk.
Because the longer it goes, the more I have.
As soon as we hang up, I'm like, man, that was a great episode. I can't wait for it to come out, and that's all I have to do.
Yeah.
No, but I think we've exhausted this enough. That was a great discussion. It was a great time. But I got nothing else, man. So anything else you want to say? Just want to sign off?
No, let's just sign off. So thanks for being on the call with me, Levi. This is Darren, and as usual, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, whatever. And I was right. You were wrong. That's the typical sign-off that I'm going with.
And I guess my sign-off will always change a bit. I'll always stay with a note of positivity. Be good to each other.
Love yourself.
Love yourself. Discuss responsibly. Don't force choke anyone of a different ethnicity or a different gender ever.
That's getting cut.
That's getting cut. And just keep on loving Star Wars the best you can. My name's Levi. I had a great time.
All right, well, thank you for tuning in. This has been Rice and Spice. My name is Darren. I was on the call with Levi, and I am hoping you are having a fantastic and wonderful day. Bye.